All right, good day, everyone. In today's session, we will be discussing design heuristics, and we'll learn for the part one. We'll just have the first five design heuristics, and then the part two would have the other five. And this session is going to be very informative, so I advise that you listen carefully, and then if you're in the recording, you could pause to go back and replay particular things I've said, just to have a clear understanding. All right, so we get started immediately. Um, so what is the usability heuristics? What does it actually mean, right? And how does it even work? So I imagine you are building a playground. You want it to be fun and engaging for everyone. And usability heuristics are like the blueprints for a perfect playground. There are sort of principles that help us design interfaces that are easy to use, understand, and enjoy. So this is an example of you having a playing ground. You want it to be easy. You want it to be engaging, fun, exciting. But you now have a document that will tell you these are all the things that should be done to make sure this playground remains exciting, make it enjoyable for everyone, right? So in this um, highlighted container, usability heuristics itself are guidelines for ensuring that user interface design is comprehensive, straightforward, and user friendly. So these are a set of guidelines that we should follow as designers to ensure that our UI designs, our UX designs are comprehensive, straightforward, and they meet the user's need. They serve as rules of thumb when building new programs, mobile apps, websites that prioritize the user's experience. This is what usability heuristics is all about. Okay, so we're going to move on. What is usability heuristics? And then we had initial brainstorming and concept generation, wireframing and prototyping. Um, when you're designing a new product or system, when do you use usability heuristics, right? So you can use it also in when you are troubleshooting usability problems with a product or system. That is why I wanted us to do this first, usability heuristics, before we actually discuss usability, right? Um, Usability as its own topic itself. Um, okay, in general, you should use usability heuristics whenever you want to ensure that your product or system is easy to use and understand, right? Okay, so let's carry on. Now, Jakob Nielsen, if you can remember when we first discussed about timeline of experience design and how it started and all of that, we talked about Don Norman and Jakob Nielsen, and we talked about when Jakob Nielsen developed the usability heuristics or design heuristics, right? Um, if you can remember, right? So here are they. Or here it is. I meant visibility of system status, match between system and the real world, user control and freedom, consistency and standards, error prevention, recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency of use, aesthetic and minimalist design, help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors, help and documentation. Now, the first five are visibility of system status, match between system and the real world, user control, consent standards, and error prevention. These are the first five that we'll be taking today. And then in the next session, we'll learn more about the other five so that it doesn't get too much. Right? The idea is to understand how these things actually work. So let's dive right in. Okay, so the first one is visibility of system status. What is visibility of system status? So knowing what the current system status is. Now, visibility of system status is actually the current situation of that system, that product. Users need to understand um, what where they are on the product, what they are currently doing, and understand the outcome of interactions to determine the next steps. Now, interactions create trust Predictable interactions create trust in the product as well as the brand. But if we move on here, you see um, the tips for this. Communicate clearly to users what the system state is. No action with consequences to users should be taken without informing them. Do not do something on the product without the users not understanding or having an information of what is actually going on. Now, it says present feedback to the users as quickly as possible. Present feedback to the users as quickly as possible. Build trust through open and continuous communication. This is just to tell you that the product you're designing, should communicate with users very easily, clearly, and in such a way that it's understandable. Do not do anything that the users find it difficult to understand. Let every information be clearly understood and let it be visible to the users. Now, an example they did here was, who can remember what this is? These are what? Breadcrumbs for navigation. Now, visibility of systems, this is how all those things are, some of those things that we've been learning in the past. We'll be connecting them together. Once we now do psychology in design again, we'll now connect all of these things together to see that it is all one pact. You understand? So breadcrumbs are used here. And what are they used here for? To communicate clearly to users. That's why it's here. So it's telling us that, oh, we are on the payments page. I know the page. And once I'm done with the payment page, I will go next to review page. This is an example. Now you have other examples. You have checkout flow. Interactive mall maps have to show people where they currently are, stuff like that. But let's carry on. Let's look at more examples. Now, example here is you have the shoe sizes 6, 7, 8. All of them are sold out. 10, 11, and this other 11 here, all of them are sold out. But only this EU43 is not sold out. What happens here? Visibility of system status. The designer and the product team has designed the product in such a way that once it is sold out, what happens? Let it be written. Let the error state be there. Let it be boldly stated that this thing is sold out so that the user does not buy something that is sold out. This is not sold out. Now, to improve the experience, what could I have done, or what can I do as a designer? I would say 5 in stock. As a designer, to improve this experience, I would say 5 in stock, 12 in stock. That is actually visibility of system status. I understand, I know the status of this particular system. I know the status of this particular experience. Now, let's look at this one, for example. Item added to cart. You just added cloud computing course. You have 2 items in your cart. So once I add something to my cart in an e-commerce platform, what happens? It comes up with this model. First of all, it shows me the amount of items I have in my cart. Amazing. And it asks me if I would like to proceed to checkout. This is the product. What's it doing? It's communicating with me. Just how now this is just creating trust between the user and the product. I will trust this product because it tells me, oh, will I like to check out now, or will I like to continue shopping? If I like to continue shopping, I'll go back to continue shopping. Right? And other examples here as well. Choose size, please select the size before adding to bag. Now, another important thing I want to explain to you guys is what we call the error state. Error state. Very important. Error state. Now, it tells you, what is it? Please select the size before adding to bag. What it's trying to tell us here is, before you add anything to bag, you have to select a size. Choose a size. So it tells you to come here to choose a size. Now, visibility of system status applies in different ranges of your product design generally. And then you can explore as much as you can, go through more examples and ensure that anytime, look at this one for example. You just added 1 item to your cart. It shows you, this is an information that shows you that what happened, you just purchased this. All those reminders, all those notifications, all those things are things for visibility of system status. We are communicating with the user, right? So this is another example of something that is loading. Now you clicked on an icon or you clicked on a button that is loading. Now it's not showing anything. This is showing that it is processing with your icon, your loading icon, and this is also showing it's loading. But this one doesn't show anything. So how do you communicate with the user that something is actually loading? The user will just think that this thing is faulty, the app is crashed, it's not working anymore, I don't know what to do. But here, there's something they call goal gradient effect, stuff like that. But we're not going to explain psychology right now. Um, but you see that this gives the user a sense of information, a sense of communication that, okay, this thing is loading, and let me wait a little while, instead of not having anything there. So all of these things are called the visibility of system status. Now, the next one we have here is error states. For example, I was typing and I come all the way here to short bio and I put in my name and my whatever, sorry, I put in my short bio. I want to click save changes. I don't fill this in. It tells me that this field is mandatory. I need to fill this one in before I can save the changes. So I can't just fill in the short bio and save changes. I have to fill this in properly before I can move ahead, right? Now, good designers always create error states for their forms. It is very terrible that a lot of times some forms are not intuitive. They don't give good information. As a good designer, if you have a default state, you have an active state, then you have an error state for your forms. What happens when there's an error? What happens when the person is trying to skip it? Well, how do you tell the user that, oh, or email is this email is not does not exist? Things like that. You should be able to tell the users this way, right? Or in whatever way that suits the experience of the product you're currently designing. But communicate with your users. As a designer, always design error states, always design empty states, default and active states. Let the communication with the product and the user remain clear and enjoyable, right? It creates trust between the user and your product. Okay, so the next thing we have after visibility of system status, the next thing we have is what we call match between system and real world. Match between the system and real world. Now, what is the definition of this one? The design should speak the user's language, use words, phrases, and concepts familiar to the user, rather than internal jargon. Follow real-world conventions, making information appear in a natural and logical order. Now, what does this actually mean? Let's go to an example and see. Right? The language you should use depends very much on your specific users. Right? So let's do something. Let's look at this. Let's look at this again. Right? The design should speak the user's language. Use words, phrases, and concepts familiar to the user. For example, what do they have here? Here, you know that this knob is for this. This knob is for this. This knob is for this one. This knob is for this one. That's the concept they use so that users are not thinking, how do I turn on this gas? And sometimes you just have everything aligned here and it's so much confusing. You wouldn't know the one that's for this one, the one that's for this one. You just be confused, right? So it says follow real world conventions, make information appear in a natural and logical order. So we're going to go through more examples. Ensure users can understand meaning without having to go look up a word's definition. That is using clear text, using clear words, making it easy for users to understand. Never assume your understanding of words or concepts will match those of your users. User research will help you uncover your users' familiar terminology as well as their mental models around important concepts and stuff like that. Okay. So car versus automobile, shopping cart icon. Now, if you look at this one, for example, You see that here in most e-commerce websites and in real life, once you are putting something into your cart, you drop it there. For example, you're going to a mall. Either you choose a basket or a cart that you push around. And the experience is that they try to match the same experience you have in a physical store on an online store. So they use the cart icon as well. Shopping cart. They use that cart icon. The cart you use in the supermarket is what they actually used in mobile devices or online shopping. What are they trying to do? They're trying to match between the system and the real world. Do you understand that? So if you go through it, you see recycle bin. This is how it looks like. This is what it looks like. And the real life trash can. Do you see that? Another one is landing page. This is your home page, print page, search with a magnifying glass, select dates with a calendar, book a flight with an airplane icon, save, they use a floppy disk. All of these are trying to match the system with the real world so that it's easily identifiable, right? It's familiar to the user, right? The user can easily understand it and understand what it would do. Another example is design of the calculator. Have you ever noticed that the design of calculator is very much similar to that one done in real life? The physical calculator and the desktop calculator. So it's literally almost the same design. What were they trying to do? They're trying to match this design with what you have as your physical calculator. So you don't even need to learn how to use this one again. As far as you know how to use this, you definitely know how to make use of this. Look at the numbers, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, like that till 8, 9. So it matches the same design style, the same design concepts. So that's what matching between system and real world looks like. So when you're designing experiences, try as much as possible to ensure that how does this thing work in real life? Learn about it, understand how it works, and try to get a very simple concept, a similar concept that is simpler and easier for the users, so that it's easy for them to use, and then it doesn't give them cognitive overload. They don't have to overthink too much before they use the product. Moving on to user control and freedom. Here we talk about users often perform actions by mistake. They need clearly marked emergency exits to leave the unwanted action without having to go through an extended process. Now, before we get deeper into this, the first one we talked about was what? Visibility of system status. And we talked about what? We talked about how um, users should understand the current status of um, the product, or we also talked about designing the product such a way that users know the outcome of specific experiences or specific actions, right? Now, we also talked about matching between system and real world. We talked about designing experiences that should be very similar to familiar concepts to the user. Using words and jargons that using words and phrases. I said jargons. Using words and phrases that are very familiar to the user, rather than using um, you know, other jargons. Follow real world conventions and make information appear. Yeah. So let's carry on. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all together, right? The third one is user control and freedom. Definition. Okay. Says we need a clearly marked emergency exit to leave the unwanted action without having to go through an extended process. Let's dive deeper. When it's easy for people to back out of a process or undo an action, it fosters a sense of freedom and confidence. Exits allow users to remain in control of the system and avoid getting stuck and feeling frustrated. So the tips to this is to support undo and redo, show a clear way to exit the current interaction like a cancel button, make sure the exit is clearly labeled and discoverable. Hence, you have undo and redo here. This is especially in text editing softwares. Here you have delete photo or cancel, right? You have the exit sign, you have the undo and redo, um, you have the cancel button. Okay, so once you're able to design products in such a way that users can control, they can undo, they can redo, they can delete something, they can add something. There is a sense of an intuitive experience and a sense of what's the word? Uh, Users are confident in using the product. They are confident that when they make mistakes, they're able to redo that mistake. Just like once you have a mistake on your product and you do Control Z, when you're designing on Figma and you mistakenly delete three screens, and you're asking yourself, what am I going to do now? You have Control Z, and then you can still go back. There's that freedom that you have that no matter what happens, though, I won't lose my file, right? So there's an example here. I actually chose an example of me actually putting up a status, right? So before now, as of early last year or thereabout, WhatsApp did not have this feature that once you upload a status, right? Once you upload a status, you cannot easily undo it. I don't know if you get my point. So for 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, I think it's about 3 to 5 seconds that once you upload a status on your WhatsApp status, it will, this model comes up and says, oh, if you did this thing by mistake, quickly undo. And this thing is a lifesaver. A lot of people have mistakenly sent statuses and they, oh, when they see that this is a mistake, they quickly undo it. Right? So all of these things are under user control and freedoms. When you're designing products, allow users to have control over. eh, Look at it from a perspective: if this is gonna be, is this a mistake? If this is not a mistake, how can they undo it? Right? Stuff like that. That would help you in creating a user control um, um, products. Okay, I'm trying to see this other example here. Um, Here you have different options of how users want to show their notifications. So allow notifications. You see what banner style do they want? Do they want the lock screen? Do they want the notification center? Do they want these banners? Now, users have control of what they want. So for example, if I don't want this one, I will not click it. If I want this, I'll click it, I'll tap it. If I want this one, I'll tap it as well. This is all under user control and freedom, right? So this is another example. Excuse me. Excuse me. Drag and drop your file, right? The file profile is not the right size. Upload an image that is 300. Excuse me. That is 300 by 300%. 300 by 300 pixels only. Here, they're telling your users that this is majorly, as much as it's also under user control and user freedom, it's also under visibility of system status more than anything. Why? Because it gives you an information of, you know, what happens when you drop a file that is larger than 300. So if you drop a file that's larger than 600, it gives you this, right? But the control here is I can either I can drag and drop, or I can upload a file. As user control, that's freedom. It's giving me different options. But it now comes up again and brings back visibility of system status and says what? You know, this icon here, what is it? This icon is match between real life and real world, right? This one, match between system and real world. Why? Because the icon is an example of a frame with a plus icon, stuff like that. So you see that you start connecting everything together and it just makes sense. So let's go into number 4. You have consistency and standards, right? We're about rounding up. Users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. Follow platform and industry conventions. Do not go and do something that is out of space or do something that is from Jupiter or Mars because you're trying to build a product that stands out, that is different. Users want to follow there is a particular law. Again, I don't want to go to that direction, but it's a particular law that talks here about users want to use, if they are using the same product, if they are using like um if they're using for example a child deck, right? If they're going to use a Glovo, they want the experience to be very similar such that it's not too different. Though you might be offering a different experience, easier, better, but not that the experience is so different that they don't understand the actions, they don't know how to use a platform. So if you will notice that all fintech apps, they have one style they follow. All hotel apps, they have one style they follow. All ride hailing, your Uber, your Bolt, your InDrive, they all have one style, one convention they all follow. This is what we call consistency and standards. Because if they start doing something so different, it's going to be hard for users to get acquainted with these products. And then your own aim as a designer is for those people that are using Bolt, Uber, and InDrive. You want them to be using your own product. So you have to do something that follows the industry standards, but offers a better experience. So do not do something out of the world when designing, right? So let's carry on. Jacob's law. Okay, this is a law I didn't want to go into, right? But they also said it was also stated here. So Jacob's law states that people spend most of their time on products other than yours. Failing to maintain consistency may increase the user's cognitive load by forcing them to learn something new, right? By forcing them to learn something new. So improve learnability by maintaining both types of consistency, maintain consistency, follow established industry conventions, and like that. So one of the things it's telling us to do is design systems, use elements, same design system across, like consistent design. Check encounter are usually located at the front hotels. This constantly meets customers' expectation. A standardized notification design provides a similar but distinguishable look and feel. So notifications here that are very consistent. We have it here, same way you have it here. Then this is our design systems and style guides that make your design consistent. Not that this button is bigger than this one, this color is green, this other one is black, but it is consistent, and then you're following, um, you know, the standards, right? So that's what consistency and standards talk about. Um, do you have an example, right? You have an example of this. Excuse me. Okay, so for example, you want to edit the PDF, and you want to fill and sign this PDF, and you want to edit the PDF. Now, the components are very, very much what they are very consistent. You have close here, you have close here, you have next here. Now another button was added, but it wasn't added here, right? So if I want to fill, look at your toolbar. You have different tools here that are very similar to that of here on the edit PDF um, toolbar. The title here is, it's different, but it's all following consistency. It's so just imagine that instead of you to have the toolbar here, you have it by the side. Now it gets so confusing. So anytime I'm going to edit, I see it here. Anytime I'm going to fill the sign, I see it here. All of that is super confusing, and then you don't have people or users using your products as much as they want to, because it's just confusing. You're playing around. You're not being consistent. No standard design, right? So this is an example to show that. I think that's it on that example. So let's move on to the last one that we'll be taking for today, which is what we call error prevention. Now, good error messages are important, but the best design carefully prevents problem. First of all, you would have where users would always make mistakes. And as a designer, I think we've talked about this in visibility of system status. This is still connecting everything together. But users would always make mistakes. So what have you put in place as a designer? So number one, when they make mistakes, how do you explain to them that this is a mistake? And how do you reduce making errors, like error prevention? How do you reduce the um, making errors on whatever you're designing? Right? Either eliminate error-prone conditions or check for them and present users with a confirmation option before they commit to the action. Now let's get into it. Let's see. Right? For this one, you have login, you have debit card, card number, PIN, use a virtual keyboard, and then capture code is case sensitive. Now, what does this tell you? This code, a lot of times, I know what I've faced with this capture, this capture codes. They have frustrated the hell out of me. Sometimes because I do not know whether it's case sensitive or not. Sometimes I don't know whether I'm saying three or four or something. It's just super confusing. But what does this design help us with? It tells you that do not forget that that, that this here is case sensitive. So do not use capital letter D for this. Do not use capital letter F for this because it's not going to work. It's trying to ease the experience that we usually have with these codes. Right? Let's see another one. So this one here is uh, your name, mobile number, language. You see all of these things, this asterisks here. All of the asterisks let you know that these are compulsory fields. So this is compulsory, this is compulsory, this is compulsory. So that you don't skip it and then it tells you that it's an error. Right? The same thing with this again. It's trying to prevent an error. Right? So that's why it tells you it's case sensitive. And this is in a way visibility of system status as well, if you think about it. Then you see this model. This model usually comes on, the older Windows. This design, this style. Are you sure you want to move this style to recycle bin? There are sometimes that you mistakenly delete something, and then it comes up with this confirmation. So another thing designers should know is once users want to delete something or once they want to start something, there are some particular experiences that it needs confirmation, so that if it's not a mistake, it will be prevented. Very important. And that's why this model has saved a lot of people. And I use it every day while I'm designing products, just to ensure that the user is sure before making that particular decision. Some people say, oh, it's taking time, you have to do 2 clicks before you do this and that. But it's better than making a mistake, right? Um, the final one here is the card number. Now, the card number, if you look at it very clearly, you see that you have 4875. You have a space in between. You have 2545. You have a space in between. You have 4878. Why do you think a lot of products give you spacing on numbers? It's because when it is broken into chunks, it is easier to understand, thereby preventing errors. There's something that is another law, they call it Miller's law. I'm not going to explain it now because we haven't taken it, but once we explain out some of these laws, you see how these things connect. But once they're broken into chunks this way, 4875, 2545, 228, it's easier to understand. Imagine if there wasn't any spacing in between. You would make mistakes. I tell you, you would make mistakes. But for it to prevent errors, for it to be easily understood, what do? They, they make sure they have a space in between them so that it's easier for us to grasp and easier and such that we don't make errors, we don't make mistakes. And this is as well applicable in designs, just make your design look good. You don't want everything all chalked up. You don't want users to find it confusing and all of that. Spacing is created, or other ways to prevent errors are devised, right? So these are the first 5 of Jakob Nielsen's usability heuristics, design heuristics whatsoever. And this doesn't just apply to, like you've seen some of the examples, they do not just apply to um, mobile softwares and digital products, but also physical products as well, right? So the first one we said is visibility of system status. The second one was what? Match between system and real world. The third one was user control and freedom, consistency and standards, and error prevention. You could go back and do more research on these and learn more about it and how it can help your design. And in the next session, we'll be discussing more from the recognition to the flexibility to aesthetics and all of that. So I hope that you've been able to learn a lot and your approach towards how you see design and how you users will interact with your design has matured much more than before. So we'll stop here and then we'll continue from here in the next session. Thank you.